Hello everybody, welcome back. So today I want to talk about my experience playing the Thinkers Publishing tournament in Ghent. So it was quite a fun experience. Typically the tournament runs alongside the festival, so there's a festival. So when I got to the hotel, it was quite a few nights ago, I believe, was that on the Friday night last week? Maybe Saturday night. I think it might have been the Saturday night. It's all a blur now. Music belting out. They always play that Rihanna hit. Yellow diamonds in the sky. I think that's very popular amongst young people, so I've heard, right? So anyway, the chess, the first round, actually I think maybe the first round was on the Saturday. The first round was, what day is it today? Thursday, right? Yeah, first day was on the Saturday. First round was on the Saturday. So the first round was at 2, and then the second game was at 7. So to me that wasn't ideal, because what it meant was, by the time you got to 7, most of the restaurants are closed, and we made it cheaper because typically you'd end up eating in McDonald's or somewhere cheap, like kebab or whatever, rather than spending €30 on like a, sit down proper meal, right? You'd spend like €13. So it worked out a bit cheaper that way. And also it was over 5 days. I played there 2 years ago and it was one round a day, which is nicer in some ways, but also more expensive because you're spending more money, right? So cheap tournament really by comparison with some of these tournaments. It's also got good conditions for playing. I think if you played in the open, you just get a hotel, but here you got a hotel. You got, I won some prize money. There's like 5 prizes. Also got like a starting fee to play as well. So from that respect, now Daniel Fernandez dominated the tournament. So the second tournament played in a row where a younger British player just played Wales, where Balaji completely dominated really from start to finish. This is very similar. No disrespect to Balaji, Fernandez probably stronger than he's probably quite a bit stronger than Balaji, even Balaji. So Fernandez is a proper chess player. He just won quite a strong Blitz tournament, I think, or he was up there anyway in Warsaw. So he plays a lot, and he plays a lot of good players. He told me played Hans Niemann a couple of years ago. He got 1 draw, and I think he was doing well in the other game. And the thing about Fernandez is he's got quite a dynamic style, so he tends to, he can have crashes occasionally because he takes risks, but I'll just show you a few of the moments. I'm not going to spend a long time on this video. First round I played a decent game. I was playing against 2200 and yeah, I think he made a big mistake there. He should have actually taken on c4, and I thought that was not so clear because here the design is like this, but he can take with a queen and he's defending g6. Now you can go d6 followed by rook d1. I was also thinking about g4 g5. But it does, none of this wins, right? I think his actual taking there was quite a big mistake, and now he's got a bit of a problem that night. So I took the here and then captured on c8. Now I realised g4 was allowing the knight to jump to f4. Bishop g6 didn't quite work. e6 he can take with a rook, and I'm not going to be able to rupture the pawn chain. So you need to come up with a good continuation. Funny enough, this position not completely dissimilar to one I had a little bit later on in the tournament against Fernandez, but so here again you might want to pause the video and have a think about what I played here. I think I came up with a reasonable move. So I went queen c4. I was also thinking about rook e4 actually. I went queen c4. So the threat is fairly transparent. I want to go g4 and trap the knight, because the knight can no longer jump there, right? So I went h4. Yeah, I went e6. I'm taking a risk here. I'm thinking he doesn't want to take here. Bishop f5. It's like a natural move. I'm an attacking player. I just want to go forward. I was a little bit afraid of this. I mentioned this line to him after the game. I was a little bit afraid that There didn't seem to be a knockout blow here. Now the computer does say the white is still better here, but that seemed like quite a good practical try for black. I went h4. Yeah, and apparently here bishop f5. So again, you know, sometimes, you know, I'll play games, I think, yeah, I play really well. You know, I was in control. That's what I was trying to do this tournament, because, you know, I played Hungary while I just played way too quickly at times, and I kept making blunders because I wasn't really checking everything. And I realised I have to sit on my hands a lot more, you know, so trying to physically sit on my hands. But even so, I was still at times moving too quickly. And here, apparently, and the problem is when you move too quickly, you miss details, and you miss candidate moves, very importantly. And I missed bishop f5 as a move, with the idea that you just end up crashing through here immediately, and you're also threatening the pawn. So I missed bishop f5 here, but I was quite happy with knight e5 anyway, even though the computer says it's a mistake because you're missing bishop f5. Just looks like a very natural move. If you take with a bishop, I'm going to take with a rook. I felt in control here. I felt I was going to win the game. I think knight f6 was also a mistake, because now after knight g6, it's pretty much game over now. If he goes king f7, I can even take there, or go knight f4. It's all crushing. Or bishop e6 is also winning. Bishop e6, rook e6, knight f4. I calculated in the game, so he went queen c7. So now what I calculated was that rook e6. Well, firstly I thought bishop e6 wins, right? But then I saw some other ideas, because, you know, it's clear that I'm attacking here. I've got the light square bishop. It's well known in the middle game, light square bishops, if you've got opposite coloured bishops, then that favours the player who's attacking. So obviously in the end game, if you swap all the pieces off and you get the bishop against the bishop, it's going to be very drawish. But in the middle game, it's completely different. So in this position, I was calculating bishop e6, and I thought, you know, he's probably got to give out an exchange, or he's completely lost. But you're trying to go for checkmate. So I took with a rook, and when he takes, originally I was intending to take with a queen f7, but I didn't see a knockout after queen f7. Now I can then go queen c8 check. He can't go bishop f8 because of bishop e6. He can't go king h7 because of knight e5 check. He's just winning. Or knight e7 is probably forced checkmate. So after queen e6, queen f7, queen c8, I think he's got to go queen e8. And after queen c5, well, it's obviously doing very well. You're just a pawn up, and you still got an attack, right? But you're looking for more, because so then I suddenly spotted this side here, and I suddenly realised what the threat was, which is that I'm threatening knight f8, king h8, queen h7. Very, very nice. That's why I like this game. My opponent realised he's in big trouble. There's nothing you can do now. He's just dead lost. You can't move the queen anywhere to prevent that threat. If he moves a knight away, it's not going to change anything, because I'll still go knight f8 and queen h7. If he moves the pawn to h5, it's the same thing's going to happen. Go knight f8, king h6, queen g6. So the only thing you can do is move the bishop. If he moves the bishop to f8, I take it directly. So he decided to move it to h8. So again, you know, just to show you that if he did something like this, this is a very nice idea. I know it's obvious, but it's still very nice. And so he goes bishop h8, but now I've forced checkmate. And then he resigned, but I kind of like played queen f7 before he resigned. I actually got mated myself last year with queen f7, but that was like a surprise, because I hadn't seen the mate against Soham La Jolla in Northumbria Masters in a tournament in a GM section, by the way. So I lost that game. So it was kind of nice to get my revenge on queen f7. So I won that game. The second round I drew against promising junior, got an IM norm, Elias Rajansky, originally from Russia, now living in Belgium. Talented player. He beat the top seed Arthur Pippers, who's also a very strong player. Arthur didn't have a great tournament. He had a winning position against Fernandez, failed to convert. Obviously, Fernandez had a little bit of luck to get the score he got, 7.5, but you always need a bit of luck to win tournaments, you know, any tournament. I certainly wouldn't say he was lucky in this tournament. He probably had other games where he possibly should have won it himself, you know, so he could easily have even got a higher score. I played against Fernandez in round 3, and at some point I was doing well, but I think I made a mistake because here when he went a5, I probably should have gone b3, and because I know that a4 is I've had this before, but I just think it's quite hard to play this position for white. I had it against Teodora Injic, who's a European women's chess champion, by the way, and I drew a good game in the Bruges Masters last year. And I also had it against Eldar Gasanov, again in that same tournament I was mentioning where I lost to Soham Lahoya. I drew. That game was a crazy game. I sacked a rook or something like that to try and stay alive, and I managed to somehow swindle a draw out of it. But so Fernandez actually was putting me on a lot of pressure in this game because he was playing quite quickly, and it kind of threw me a little bit. I wasn't expecting him to play quite that fast, even though I know he'd won that Blitz tournament recently. So obviously that probably a good idea to play more rapid and Blitz, and maybe that's what's going to take him to. Definitely Fernandez has got the potential, in my opinion, to be 2600. It won't be easy though because of so much rating deflation in the system. He's going to be over 2500 on the next list after this performance. But 2500 now is probably worth 2600 like 20 years ago because there's so much deflation in the system. So he's a genuinely strong player. But yeah, so here, yeah, Bishop F1 was not the best. Maybe I was thinking about Knight F5, but then I was concerned about F6. And after going Bishop F1, he should go F6. Now, the reason he should go F6 is because it opens up the rook. And obviously, that's the move you want to play from your own attacking perspective. But he was a little bit concerned about the fact that it would weaken the squares around the king because, you know, G6 comes weak if the knight jumps in. So he went G6, which I'd actually missed. I hadn't seen this idea going G6. Yeah, and I think this was also a key moment where I could have got the advantage. So you got to find... I saw this move, but only later. You got to find this move, King H2. It's a really nice idea. It's almost like one of these kind of problems from these Dvoretsky books where, you know, you've got to think really deeply about the position and think, you know, what's the positional idea and all this. So the idea is go to Bishop H3. And the other idea is Bishop H3 exchanges off light square bishops. Which is defending some squares around his king, you know, like E6 square, just in case there might be an E6 break in some. But also, more importantly, it has this plan to go knight G1 and F4, and you know, that's like Layla style. Just throw all the pawns forwards, you know, throw the dice, see what happens. So that would have given white the advantage. But I didn't see that move. You know, I was looking at lines like actually after bishop. Sorry, I went bishop D2. Or maybe it was here that you go King H2 actually. Yeah, Bishop D3 was definitely a mistake. Yeah, I think it's here that you go King H2. So he went Rook H8 and went Knight F8, went Knight F4. Yeah, another line I was looking at was to put the king on H2 in this position. I was looking at King H2. I think white has some chances because the idea is knight F4, G4, bishop H4, you could go F5, and then that's the line I saw. But after King H2, I thought, how do I continue, you know, after that? Because clearly black eventually wants to go C5 and open up the position. But in the game, I ended up losing a pawn anyway. So he went Queen B6. Yeah, there were also like ideas of going G5 that worried me in the game, but you know, black. Yeah, so G5 actually was scary to me because G5, HG, Bishop G5, F4 I calculated, and then I wondered about H4. And if I take on g5, he takes on g3. And I looked at lines like knight g2, queen g5. Or knight f3 maybe is good though. Because how does he get the queen into the attack? Knight f3, bishop g4. It's a bit messy and probably not a very good line for black. So he played natural move, queen b6. I'd say natural player, queen b6. Natural talent. And then, yeah, mistake it. g5 was giving black a big advantage. But bishop d6 he played, and then I kind of collapsed. Like, mentally collapsed. So I took on g6, and he went queen f6, and I was just resigned, which is a completely ridiculous decision. But I just felt from his body language that he felt he was winning, and I just sort of believed him, right? And so one thing, well, the problem was I missed. It is kind of like a legitimate position to resign, whereas some of the positions I resign, you know, I mentioned to him later that some of the positions I resign aren't, you know, aren't even remotely resignable, don't even look resignable. But this one kind of, because the reason it looks resignable is it looks like where you just lose the exchange and all your pawns are weak, and that's what I thought. I thought this is game over, right? I mean, you know. But apparently rook d3, which is actually a move I saw in the game, but I just thought it must be bad because he's got like bishop d3, and but you know, you should at least test it. What have you got to lose? If you resign, the game is over. If you check it, you just never know, right? And I did see that in some instances his rook has a problem getting to g8 because obviously the bishop is just going to take. I mean, the computer actually gives this as close to equal, which is, you know, I was kind of shocked after the game that it wasn't completely winning. Actually, now it's changed, right? No. Yeah, there's a very weird line like this. Which still looks lost, to be honest. But the point is that your pawns are really just coming like way forward. And it's actually quite, you know, you could even win this, to be honest, because it's quite a tricky position. So to resign is a ridiculous decision. That's obvious. But you're still worse, actually. The engine confirms that you're still worse. But resigning was bad. So I had a chance in that game. I didn't take it. Lost the game. But then I played like a good bounce back game. I played against Julian Victor, who had a bad tournament. He lost every game. I was still quite happy about our game. The only thing was I kind of blundered at some point. Like, I mean, I made a joke that he's got an ironic name called Victor and he lost every game. But I think honestly, like, that doesn't reflect. He's obviously a strong player. He's quite a young guy, and he, you know, to get to 23-16 at that age is a pretty impressive achievement. He's obviously just had a bad tournament, and the thing is, when you lose early, he had difficult pairings early on. When you lose early, that puts you under pressure, and then you start. When I lost to Daniel, I felt tilted in this game because I just lost the game. Not because I lost to Daniel, but because I just lost. So I felt tilted myself. So I was lucky that I was playing somebody who was also tilting a little bit. And I went b5 very, very quickly, like an ego thing, because he was playing fairly quickly. And I went b5, and then I said, oh my god, he's got e5 and bishop f3. What have I just done? I was very lucky that after e5. So again, you know, if I hadn't been tilting, I probably would have gone knight bd7. So when you lose a game, it has a direct effect on you, on your mental state. You start losing confidence, and you start feeling helpless that you're going to lose again. If I've gone, you know, you don't put up as much fight, essentially. You just sit there and you think, well, I'm going to lose again. I'm going to lose again. So knight bd7 was more sensible, and then you wouldn't have had the same issues, and then you can go b5, you know. But b5 is apparently still okay, because you got this move, b4, very important. Now, I was most afraid of this line. And I said to him after the game, you should have possibly done this. Bishop b7 really saves black, sorry. But after rook g1, it's kind of unclear. I think he should have gone for this. You probably have to lose the exchange, maybe trade, followed by g6. Give up the exchange. You get a very good comp. Like h2 is weak. What's the engine saying? Yeah, it even actually prefers. Maybe king takes is not the best actually. Should take with a knight, yeah. And but I think practically maybe this favours. I'm not sure who this favours actually. But practically it might favour white almost because if you go in a3 and then the rook is getting active, you know the rooks are very powerful, right? So I think it was a big mistake not to play knight a4 anyway. He went, he took. So then we get a position which is quite similar to a line in a 6g4 knight off, which I've studied before. So I felt reasonably happy by this point. I think he went a bit bonkers with bishop d5. I think that was a little bit of a lack of experience. That, yeah, I mean, objectively, after move like rook e1, knight b6, black is doing. I was intending to go knight b6. It doesn't matter if I lose this pawn because, sorry, not that move. Queen d5, rook b8, or rook a7. You've got a great position because, you know, but you've got to force your opponent, a little bit like what I didn't do against Fernandez. You've got to force your opponent to beat you. I think this is like a little bit impatient, and yeah, because the problem is now this end game, which I think he's almost. I think he should have gone for the end game anyway, but it's a really bad end game for white. So I saw a line like c4, and maybe even just bishop g5 check, king b1, bishop e6. c5, rook c8 was quite good, for example, with no danger whatsoever for black. You might not win, but you're almost certainly not going to lose, and it's very comfortable. But he decided to keep the queens on. Sorry, he took there, and then he went queen h5, which I've sensed he'd kind of given up by this point, by his body language. And I went queen f3 and he actually just resigned, a little bit like what I did. Probably premature. He can go queen h6 and battle on, but it's very bad. Like I saw a line like queen h6, knight g4, queen f4, for example. If knight c, yeah, and it's not 100% winning. You know, it's better for black, but you should probably play it on a little bit. I mean, there's also knights. Was it knights g6, right? But then he goes queen e3, and then tries to like hold this. Now it's probably objectively lost, but okay, he resigned the game, which is fair enough. But I think that was the direct result. Premature resignation last round was also maybe direct result of feeling demoralised because he lost so many games. So understandable. He'll get better. You know, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Round 5, I drew with Debagazi. I thought I was worse. He offered me a draw like at the end, and I accepted. But when I checked later, I thought I was worse because I was like lacking in development. His rook was active, and I misassessed the position. I thought he was going bishop f5. Certainly, black it hasn't got any problem. Debagazi is a very tough guy to beat. Because he's so like a solid crew, you know, he's a very solid player. He's not quite as good as he was, but then again, neither am I, right? Round 6 was probably my best game, actually. That was definitely my best game of the tournament, and I prepared fairly well for this game. So, because obviously the games were finishing, the 1 o'clock game, because I drew early on with Debagazi, I had quite a lot of time to prepare for Gruta, who was playing a long end game. So he was kind of in a disadvantage in that sense. Now, obviously, you could prepare before the tournament as well. The pairings were published in advance. But Gruta was unlucky in that first game because he was totally winning against Van Oosh from the Netherlands. I believe Gruta is also from the Netherlands, right? He's not Belgium, he's a Netherlands player. He's totally winning. And he lost. So that also, you know, probably had a demoralising effect on him for his game. But I felt I played it fairly well. So I prepared this line, and because people keep bashing up my knight d7, even though I tend to play a lot of the positions quite well. You know, they're going for these kind of weird lines, and I'm getting bashed up with knight d7. So I'm having to change my repertoire a little bit. So I prepared this. Like I saw he had a game in this. Yeah, and the computer goes a4, right? And the main line is this, and queen a1, castles, rook c1, and it says that black is slightly worse. What's the move now? Queen. This is actually still theory. Wow. And there's been a lot of games in this as well. Queen b7. Yeah, you're a tiny bit worse. Although black scored 50%. So yes, actually probably correspondence games, because these don't look like a Yuri Kuzubov is a. I'd imagine that's a correspondence game. Yeah. Kuzubov is a genuine 2600, but these guys I've not heard of. That one I wouldn't. Yeah, Lara Schultz is an over the board player. But yeah, it's all just like engine stuff, right? So I don't think he knew it that well. He took and then went b4, which there's only one game of that and black won, right? It's still okay because I understood his idea. His idea is to go knight b3, knight a5, and then knight c6, because now I've got a hold on c6. So he can't go knight b3, knight a5 immediately because I'm controlling the a5 square. If he goes knight b3, he could go knight b3, queen d2. That's not ridiculous. But he decided to go b4. Yeah, it started getting very complicated now. But now I started thinking, because I'm writing this book and I'm talking about how you want to put your pieces closer to the king. So now I saw I started to have counter-attacking opportunities here. You know, the white king is a little bit weak because he's taken back on f3 with a pawn. He said in the game afterwards, that he'd underestimate how dangerous these positions could become. So I went knight h5. You know, that's like my old instincts kicking in that I'm attacking. This is how I like to play chess, right? It was nice actually that after the Fernandez game, I didn't lose another game. So that was a good bounce back in a way. And this was like my best game. Although I didn't win as many games at the end as I would have liked. So I was most worried about queen a7. And I calculate the line, like queen a7, bishop g5, bishop b6, queen e7, knight c5, dc5, bishop c5, queen e8, bishop takes f8, king takes f8, rook a1, g6, queen b7, king g7, rook a7, knight f6. Although he's got bishop takes b5 at the end there, I guess. But it's all a bit murky, right? It's lines like that, they're very murky. You know, and there's also when... But anyway, this is all kind of irrelevant, because after bishop g5, bishop b6, I can go queen e8, and the computer says I'm better, because I've still got this counterplay coming with f5. So the best move apparently was... what was the best move here? Oh, queen a6 was the best move, which I didn't even consider in the game. Looked very weird. But then that does make some sense because it hits b5. Oh yeah, here was also... yeah, actually the reason I took on a1 as well is also worth mentioning, because I actually calculated if I go knight h5, he goes knight a5. And then when I go f5, he goes like knight c6. So I wanted to basically have this position where, you know, I thought if he goes knight a5, then the rook is really doing nothing on a8. So I wanted to at least get rid of that rook, even though it brought the queen to a more active square. So knight h5, I think that was a good decision to take on a1 actually. And then I think he missed queen e8. So that's what I say. I think around about here, I could tell through his body language, he's still thinking about that previous round, which is understandable. And I think that's why it's difficult to play 2 rounds a day as well, because you've got that emotional, you're thinking about the previous game, or you're tired from the previous game, and You know, I could tell it had affected him, and I think around about here he started playing quite poorly. You know, and I think that game had affected him. And I think a move like knight d2 was quite good, but he went bishop e2, and that was actually apparently just a very bad move and already losing. And now this position is very, very bad for white, because if you move the bishop, where do you either have to move the bishop back, which is going to allow moves like knight h3 or bishop g4 or whatever, queen h5, or you do what you do in the game, what you did in the game, which is take. But then clearly now I could see, well, this position is very, very nice for black, because I've got the rook on f4, it's attacking e4, it's also attacking f2, it's more or less forcing him to play f3 if he doesn't want to lose a pawn. So it goes f3, but now I go rook h4, and he went queen a7. I was actually more concerned about rook g3 actually, just to prevent the bishop coming there. Although there was something wrong with rook g3, rook g1, sorry. So I thought in some lines it's useful to have the queen on a5 because it's directly attacking b5. So if I go put the queen on h5, so rook g1, queen h5 was possibly what he was concerned about. I mean, it's obviously a good position for black, but he went queen a7. Lines like rook h2 don't quite work, so I went bishop g5. It came back. So I'd seen this position earlier and I got very excited because I thought, oh, I can play bishop e3, which wins on the spot if he takes, because then I go rook takes and then check. And then this is checkmate attack, right? Very nice idea, right? But the problem is he goes rook g7, and he's fighting on here. He's fighting on. Position's bad, but it's still very bad. Probably winning for black, but he's still fighting. Unfortunately, I had that move, which is very, very strong, and he's in trouble now. To prevent rook takes h2, he's got to go rook g2, and now I went there. Now if he comes back, I go bishop takes h2, very simple winning attack. If he takes on h2, I go bishop f1. Sorry, I'll just go bishop d7, that's game over. You're going to win on material. If he takes the king, obviously you're going to have the same sort of issues. Well, actually, it's probably going to be checkmate now. Or queen takes, you take with a queen. So a very nice idea, bishop takes h2. So he has to get out the rook. He doesn't want to allow bishop takes followed by rook h2, so he has to play that. So I took. But now this is a situation where I know I'm almost certainly winning, but I'm getting nervous because obviously, you know, I know this is a good player, and I know he's going to resist very well, which he now did. Fortunately, I somehow did enough to get over the line, but it was another situation where I was starting to get very nervous and thinking I'm going to blow the win, right? Because obviously I'm just exchange up now, and his king is also more exposed than my king. But, you know, there are some hopes for white. You know, b5 is weak. Maybe sometimes he can go f4, though that opens up his king as well. His knight can get to good squares, or his knight can defend as well. So it's not completely trivial. And maybe I was like getting too worried here because of, I think knight e2 immediately is bad because of bishop f1, you get trade bishops. But because I had too many games against Leela, so you think everyone's going to defend like Leela, and you know, I can't even win, like, just clear exchange up, right? So I think actually it's dangerous to play games against Leela because it just demoralises you for any kind of technical. Or you could argue the other way, and you could say, well, if you play a lot of games against Leela, it's useful because it makes you realise how much people can resist. So it makes you realise how much counterplay they can get. Anyway, I'm babbling a lot. He went there. So I decided not to go bishop d7. I should have gone bishop d7, but I was concerned that he would start defending and it would make it difficult to convert. So I went there, and after he took, originally I'd intended to go here, but then I thought he would go. What I was worried about. What was I worried about here? I was worried about something here. Ah, yes, I was worried about queen b6, for example, threatening this. And then after I take, now I couldn't completely assess this, but the engine says it's totally winning. And again, bad assessment. But I was a little bit concerned the bishop comes here and he goes b5, b6 very quickly. But apparently, I think I did calculate something like this in the game, but I clearly didn't calculate it very well. How does this win, right? b5, rook f6. Yeah, I mean, it looks visually like a little bit dangerous, but the engine just says it's just completely winning. Because once the pawn gets to b7, you know, it looks dangerous, but yeah, lines like this are just completely over. So instinctively I should have gone for that line because it looked winning, and it felt more natural to go queen h5 than the move I played, which was rook g6, which is still very good for black, fortunately. He went bishop f1, which again a move that I missed. King h2 I think was not. Yeah, so probably you have to. He would force me to go into that line if he'd gone king h2. So maybe that was a better practical try. Went bishop f1. And yeah. So actually another interesting line after bishop f1. I nearly went queen g3, and I saw that this ending was possible. Knight d2. Let's say bishop a6. But then I noticed he had knight b1. Because I think if he doesn't have knight b1, then he's probably winning. But it's ridiculous to give up your exchange. But knight b1, the engine says that white's fine. Knight b1, knight c3, b5. I get very tied down by the b pawn. And the knight is very active. Now you're pawn up, but the engine says that white's at least equal. So I'm glad I didn't go for that. I was thinking a long time here. I was starting to... You know, I was really forcing myself to take my time because I realised in some of my previous tournaments I'd rushed when I had winning positions, and I was forcing myself to sit there and really calculate out the variations. Yeah, so he said knight d2 was a bad move, but I had calculated in the game that after b5 I had actually seen this, I think. Check here, rook h6. I'd seen b6 and I'd seen that rook h2 b7 was quite annoying. Because then you can't stop the pawn, and then you have to, I think you have to battle out with a draw. But the problem is I'd seen that queen b1 was winning because b7, queen b3, and if it moves a knight, then I go like rook h1, I'll start getting in. If he goes knight d2, I got queen b5 check, for example. Must be winning. So I had seen that queen b1 was winning. When I calculated, I was a little bit concerned about b5 though because it looked very messy. So when you got a lost position, you're just trying to clutch at any straw. But he went knight d2, but that's actually the top move. But it's losing. Queen h3, queen g2, queen d7 was a nice. I can just basically stop the pawn with the queen. The rook is always going to come into the game later. Yeah, he's too tied down by the weakness on g3 as well. If he ever goes g4, I've got h5 ideas. So he goes king e1, and then the game for rook h6 very accurate. Because if he goes back to g2, now what you don't want is say something like this, and I wanted to avoid something like this. And I thought, yeah, maybe I'm still winning, but it's, you know, you can mess this up completely because, you know, let's say the knight suddenly gets around to an annoying square, like maybe e3 or something, or c4 hits d6, or, you know, knight e3 moves a queen, knight f5. Who knows, right? You're probably going to win, but it's very, very tough to win. And I thought I could easily mess that up, so I had to be very accurate here. And I went rook h6. I was quite happy with that move because if he goes back to g2 or f1, I've got queen b4, and he's nowhere near as active. and I'm in control of the game. So the rook can always come back to f6 to f8, come back in on the queen side even in some lines as well. So the game finished like this, and b5 was also losing. If he goes to h, no, he has to go to h. If he goes to e1, I go queen e2. If he goes to e3, I go queen e2, mate. So he's got to go to g1. And I'd seen this now, and all you have to be is slightly accurate. You don't go to e7, that would be very embarrassing after queen g5 check. And then he tries to win himself with the extra pawn. Quite possibly succeeds as well. But king e8 is just basically an extra rook. And so I won the game. So that game I was really happy with. I thought that was like one of the best games I've played in years. You know, to beat a strong player with black is never easy. And very, very happy with that game. And it's tough when you play 2 games a day now. So what I tend to do now, I get a Red Bull for the second game, and I drink a Red Bull. And I think even a 1 game a day games is probably useful. Maybe you're doping, but brain doping by having a Red Bull. You know, like, I don't know, FIDE drug test for too much caffeine or whatever, but I think a Red Bull is acceptable. You know, but I just feel like I need it now. Like, I'm tiring in the second games, and if you've got some kind of energy drink, it gives you a kind of a boost for that second game. Anyway, yeah, I was reasonably happy with the way the tournament went. I got I gained about 2 points back, but given I lost 5 in Wales and 20 in Hungary, I think the problem was Hungary, because I was rusty. So once I've come back and I've played a couple of tournaments, I started playing more on my normal level. That's what I showed here. This, I think, is more my normal level, like 2400, comfortable 2400. I only lost 1 game. I think when I'm in top form, I can perform at like 2530, 2550, and play fairly accurately. But when I'm rusty, like I was in Hungary, my level drops a lot. So that's the challenge going forward. How am I going to avoid being rusty again? But anyway, well done to Fernandez. He basically outclassed the field, 7.5. You know, the second, I got joint second with 5.5, so he won by 2 points. He actually won the tournament. He was guaranteed to come equal first with 2 rounds to go, which in itself is just, you know, mind-boggling. So he's generally a force going forward, and I think he's got a pretty decent chance to win the British. I'd say he's about a 20 to 1 shot to win the British. It's going to be tough because obviously you've got Adams there, and you've got bit of Yugov, Adams, Michael Adams just won the English Championships. You've got Gawain Jones as defending champion, the British. So it's a very strong lineup, but I think he has got a genuine chance because he is dangerous and he can beat even very strong players, which he's shown in the past. So yeah, that'd be interesting. Anyway, let me know what you thought of the video. Please like and subscribe. I'm starting to get burnt out by YouTube now, to be honest. But maybe I'm just tired. It's like a 10-hour journey I've just had. Coming back is a long way on the train. Things you can get a flight as well, but if you're flying to Newcastle, you go to Amsterdam. Don't think they fly direct from Newcastle. You could get a transfer flight from Newcastle to Brussels, which probably takes about 6 hours. But if you fly direct, you go to Amsterdam. But then it's another 4 hours back. So the problem is all the waiting at the airport and all that kind of stuff. Getting your bags and stuff. I just thought it's easier just to get the train. And also when you get the train, you know where your bag is. You don't have to worry about losing your bag or your luggage or anything like that so much. So, you know, and you can put as much in your luggage as you want. You can take a massive great bag. If you take a massive great bag onto the airplane, they charge you extra. Anyway, thanks for watching the video.